They didn't just take a few feet of gravel. They took the one thing I'd worked my whole adult life to own outright. And the craziest part is they honestly thought I'd just shrug and live with it. If you've ever had someone smile at you while they slowly move a fence across your property line, you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's not just anger. It's disbelief first. Then it's this quiet kind of insult that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. I bought my place 9 years ago, back when interest rates were decent and the neighborhood still felt like the kind of place where people borrowed sugar instead of attorneys. It's a corner lot in a blue-collar pocket just outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, detached garage that leans a little when the wind hits it hard, and a wide gravel driveway that wraps along the side yard before opening up behind the fence. That driveway was the reason I bought the house. I run a small landscaping company. Nothing huge, just me, 2 guys in the busy season, a pickup, a trailer, mowers, mulch deliveries, pallets of stone sometimes. That wraparound drive let me park everything without blocking the street, without bothering anyone. I always kept it neat. No junk, no oil stains. I took pride in it. For years, nobody complained. Then the Callaways moved in next door. Their names were Brent and Elise Callaway. Mid-40s, sharp clothes, matching silver SUVs, the kind of couple that looks like they stepped out of a home renovation commercial. They bought the old Ramirez place for almost double what it had sold for 5 years earlier, and within weeks the contractors showed up. New siding, black framed windows, white stone facade, perfectly symmetrical shrubs. I remember standing at my mailbox one evening when Brent walked over the first time. Crisp polo shirt, loafers without socks, hand extended like we were closing a business deal. "Hey there, neighbor. Brent Callaway. We're really excited to elevate the feel of this street." Elevate. That was the word. I told him I was Nate Harper, welcomed him to the neighborhood. He nodded toward my truck and trailer. "You run a business out of here?" "Landscaping," I said. "Keeps me busy." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Gotcha. Well, I'm sure we'll all work together to keep things looking clean." I should have heard it right then. That tone. Polite, but already measuring me. Over the next couple months, little comments started floating over the fence. Not directly at first, just loud enough. "That truck's pretty big for a residential street, don't you think? Is that equipment stored outside overnight?" I thought there were neighborhood guidelines. There weren't. No HOA. That's one reason I bought here. But Brent missed having one. You could tell. The real issue showed itself one Saturday when they hosted a dinner party. 4 cars lined their driveway, 2 more along the curb. I came home from a job and found one of their guests' BMWs angled halfway into the mouth of my driveway. I knocked on their door. Elise answered with a wine glass in her hand. "Hey," I said, keeping it calm. "One of your guests is blocking my drive." She turned her head slightly and called over her shoulder. "Brent, it's about the parking." He appeared behind her, already annoyed. "It's just for a few hours," he said. "We've got limited space." "You've got your driveway," I said. "This is mine." He gave me that tight smile again. "Your driveway extends pretty far over toward our side. It extends exactly where the property line is." He tilted his head. "Are you sure about that?" That's when I felt the first flicker of something that wasn't just irritation. It was a warning. The orange cones showed up a week later. 3 of them, placed right along the gravel near what Brent clearly believed was the dividing line. Not on his grass. On my gravel. I got out of my truck, stared at them for a good 30 seconds, then moved them onto his lawn. Didn't throw them. Just set them down gently. 10 minutes later, he was knocking on my door. "We're thinking that side section of the driveway makes sense as shared access," he said. "You've got plenty of depth back there, and we need overflow parking when we host." "It's not shared," I said. "It's deeded." "We had a guy take a look," he replied. "Looks like that stretch actually falls within our boundary." I almost laughed. "Then show me the survey." "It's being finalized." "That means you don't have one." His smile disappeared completely. "We'll see about that." And that's when things stopped being neighborly. A week later, I left for work at 6:30 in the morning. When I came back around 4, I saw fresh black asphalt where my gravel had been. About a 10-foot stretch of it, smooth, clean, and neatly connected to their driveway like it had always belonged there. And running straight down what used to be open access to my side yard was a brand new decorative fence. Matte black metal, 8 feet into what I knew, down to the inch, was my property. For a minute, I just sat in my truck with the engine running. You know that feeling when your brain tries to convince you you're misunderstanding what you're seeing? That maybe you parked wrong. Maybe you forgot something. Maybe you're overreacting. Then the reality lands. They didn't ask. They didn't wait for paperwork. They just built over it. I walked straight to their front door. Elise answered again, same wine glass, like it was part of the uniform. Your husband paved over my driveway, I said, voice steady, and fenced off my property. She took a slow sip. Brent had it surveyed. That portion falls on our side. We simply improved it. Show me the survey. It's filed. Then you won't mind emailing it to me. She smiled, and it wasn't friendly this time. Maybe check your own documents. That night, I pulled every paper I had from the closing file. Deed, plot map, official county survey with stamped corners marked by iron pins. I even walked the line with a metal detector and found the original markers buried under the grass. They were exactly where I remembered, which meant Brent had just gambled that I wouldn't fight back. I called him the next morning. You've got 48 hours to remove the asphalt and the fence. He actually laughed. We made permanent improvements to our property. If you've got a problem, Nate, call a lawyer. There's something about being told that in your own driveway that flips a switch inside you. So I did call a lawyer. And while the paperwork started grinding through its slow, expensive process, Brent enjoyed his new parking space. That was his first mistake. While the legal wheels were turning, Brent treated that strip of asphalt like he'd conquered it in war. Every morning, his silver SUV sat squarely on that fresh black patch like a trophy. On weekends, they hosted friends and guided them with little hand gestures, waving them onto what used to be my gravel. Pull up here, I heard him say once. We expanded. I'd park my truck behind the fence line and just stand there for a minute, looking at it. 10 feet. That's all it was. 10 feet wide, maybe 30 long. But it wasn't about the space anymore. It was about being tested. I met with a property attorney named Linda Carver downtown. No nonsense, late 50s, reading glasses on a chain. She flipped through my documents and nodded slowly. You're right. They built on your land. So we file. I asked. We file, she said. But understand something. These things don't move fast. Months, sometimes. Months. Meanwhile, every single day I had to look at that fence cutting into my yard like a scar. That's when the idea started forming. Because here's the thing Brent didn't think through. Even with his illegal asphalt and fence, the land was still legally mine, which meant I could use it. I didn't have to wait quietly. The first opportunity came naturally. I had a big commercial mulch job starting that Tuesday. 15 cubic yards coming in on a dump truck at 7 a.m. I met the driver at the curb. Hey, I said casually. See that new blacktop next door? Back it up right there and drop it. He looked unsure. You sure? Positive. The truck rumbled into position, tailgate lifted, and a mountain of dark brown mulch cascaded down, spreading across that stolen section like a landslide in slow motion. Perfectly centered, completely blocking Brent's shiny new access point. I didn't rush to move it. At 7:22 a.m., their front door flew open. Brent came out in a gray bathrobe, hair sticking up, fury written across his face. What the hell is this? He yelled. Mulch, I said calmly. For a client. You dumped it on our driveway. No. I corrected him, pointing to the survey stakes I'd remarked with bright orange flags. I dumped it on my property. You're blocking our vehicles. Then I guess you'll have to use your original driveway. His jaw tightened. Move it. I'll get to it when my schedule allows. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're being petty. I smiled a little. No, Brent. I'm being accurate. He called the police within the hour. 2 officers showed up, both younger guys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. They listened, walked the line, looked at my stamped survey copy. One of them scratched his head. Sir, he said to Brent, this appears to be his property. But he's blocking access to our drive. The officer shrugged. Then maybe you shouldn't have connected it to his land. I almost felt bad for the guy. Almost. The mulch sat there for 3 full days. It rained once, which made it heavier and slightly messier. Brent glared at it every time he walked by. Elise taped a typed note to my fence. Neighborhood standards matter. Please act responsibly. I kept the note. It still makes me laugh. When I finally moved the mulch for my job, Brent looked relieved. That relief lasted exactly 4 days. The next delivery was gravel. 10 tons of it. I scheduled it for a Friday afternoon when I knew they had guests coming that evening. The driver didn't even question me this time. The pile that landed on that asphalt was magnificent, taller than the fence, wide enough to make it absolutely impossible to maneuver around. Brent stormed over before the dust even settled. This is harassment. No, I said, brushing stone dust off my jeans. This is storage. You're doing this on purpose. I paused. You built on purpose. That one landed. He called the police again. Same result. Civil matter. My property. Over the next week I used that strip constantly. Pallets of pavers. Stacked timbers. Even my trailer parked diagonally across it when I felt like it. It became a daily reminder that paper ownership still meant something. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't start wearing on me. There's a strange tension that creeps into your life when you're in a standoff with the person who shares your fence line. Every trash day felt loaded. Every time I stepped outside, I wondered if there'd be another surprise construction crew. One evening, I overheard Brent talking loudly in his backyard while I was grilling. He's running a commercial operation, he was saying. I'm filing complaints with zoning. So now it wasn't just about parking. It was about control. He wanted the neighborhood polished, curated, controlled. And I was the inconvenient holdout with a truck and gravel and dirt under my nails. A week later, I got a certified letter. He was suing me, claimed I was damaging his improved driveway access, interfering with property enjoyment, creating nuisance conditions. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. The nerve. I drove straight to Linda's office. He sued, I said, dropping the letter on her desk. She skimmed it, unimpressed. Good. That speeds things up. Good. We countersue for encroachment, trespass, and demand full restoration. Judges don't like self-help property grabs. That phrase stuck with me. Self-help property grabs. That's exactly what he'd done. He didn't want a dispute. He wanted a quiet takeover. Around that time, I added my third and most theatrical move. I rented a bright blue portable toilet for a large landscaping contract. I didn't need it at my house, but technically, I was allowed temporary job storage on my property. Guess where I placed it? Right along the property line, squarely on the contested strip, door facing their patio. When it was delivered, Elise came out with her phone already recording. This is unbelievable, she said. It's OSHA compliant, I replied. Safety first. For 2 weeks, that porta potty stood like a monument to stubbornness. Delivery drivers asked questions. Neighbors whispered. Some of them, the older ones who'd been around forever, gave me subtle thumbs up. One evening, Mr. Halpern from across the street shuffled over. Son, he said quietly, don't let them push you. We all saw what they did. That meant more than he probably realized. The court date was finally set for early spring. By then, the asphalt was cracked in places from the weight I'd put on it. The fence leaned slightly where survey flags marked its trespass. The tension had hardened into something cold and steady inside me. Brent stopped smiling entirely. And when we walked into that courtroom, I could tell he still believed money and confidence would carry him through. He hadn't realized yet that this wasn't about aesthetics. It was about boundaries. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, wood paneling that had seen better decades, the faint smell of old paper and burnt coffee drifting from somewhere down the hall. It wasn't dramatic, not like TV, no booming gavels or gasps from the crowd. Just a handful of folding chairs, a clerk typing steadily, and a judge who looked like he'd heard every neighbor dispute imaginable. Brent sat at the opposite table in a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. Elise beside him, posture perfect, expression tight. He didn't look at me at first. When he finally did, it wasn't anger I saw. It was annoyance. Like I'd inconvenienced him by not folding sooner. Linda sat next to me, calm as ever. She leaned over and whispered, "Let him talk." The hearing started with Brent's attorney arguing that they had relied on a reasonable boundary assessment before making improvements. Reasonable. That word again. He painted this picture of a hard-working couple investing in their property, only to be targeted by a hostile neighbor running a disruptive commercial operation. I almost laughed at the phrase disruptive commercial operation. I mow lawns and lay mulch. I'm not running a refinery. When it was our turn, Linda didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize anything. She simply handed up the certified county survey, the deed, photographs of the original iron boundary pins, and timestamps showing the paving crew working while I was out of town on a job site. Then she asked the question that changed the tone of the room. "Your Honor, may we see the survey the defendants relied upon?" Brent shifted in his chair. His attorney handed over a single sheet of paper. It wasn't stamped. It wasn't certified. It wasn't even drawn by a licensed surveyor. It was a rough sketch with handwritten measurements, apparently done by a contractor Brent had hired with a tape measure and what looked like an online satellite image printout. The judge adjusted his glasses and stared at it for a long time. "Is this an official survey?" he asked. Brent cleared his throat. "It was conducted by a professional." "A licensed surveyor?" the judge interrupted. Silence. "No, Your Honor," Brent's attorney admitted. The judge set the paper down carefully, like it might contaminate his desk. He turned to Brent. "You poured asphalt and erected a fence based on this." Brent tried to maintain composure. "We believed in good faith." Good faith would have involved confirming the property line before construction, the judge said flatly. There wasn't any shouting. No dramatic hammering of the gavel. Just steady, unmistakable disapproval. When the ruling came, it was direct. Full restoration of my property to its prior condition. Removal of all asphalt encroachment. Removal of the fence section crossing the boundary. Payment of my legal fees and court costs. Brent's face went pale in a way that had nothing to do with lighting. And then the judge added something that stuck with me. Property lines exist for a reason. Taking matters into your own hands is not how civilized disputes are resolved. Civilized. That word echoed in my head for days. Because the truth is, none of this felt civilized while it was happening. It felt personal. It felt tense. It felt like a Cold War conducted with gravel and paperwork. The restoration order gave Brent 30 days. The fence came down first. I watched from my garage as contractors unbolted the panels and pulled the posts out of the ground. The black metal that had once stood like a claim marker now lay stacked awkwardly on his lawn. The asphalt removal took longer. They had to cut clean lines and jackhammer the section that crossed onto my land. The sound echoed through the neighborhood for 2 days straight. Concrete dust floated through the air like a fine gray fog. I won't pretend I didn't feel something watching that fresh pavement crack apart. Not joy exactly. More like balance returning. When they finished, I had my gravel back. It wasn't perfect. It needed regrading, fresh stone, smoothing. But it was mine again. Brent avoided eye contact for weeks. Elise stopped hosting dinner parties for a while. The silver SUVs stayed neatly within their original driveway boundaries. The blue portable toilet disappeared shortly after the ruling. I didn't need it anymore. Its job was done. But here's the part that surprised me. Winning didn't feel explosive. It felt quiet. One evening, a few weeks after everything was restored, I was standing in my driveway at sunset. My truck parked where it had always been meant to sit. The gravel freshly leveled. The air finally light. Brent walked out to his mailbox. For a moment, we just stood there across the invisible line that had caused so much chaos. He hesitated, then spoke. "You could have just talked to us." I let that sit for a second. "I did," I said. "Before the asphalt." He didn't respond. There's this narrative people like Brent carry around, that if they move confidently enough, if they act certain enough, the world will adjust to them. That others will yield to avoid conflict. And most of the time, maybe they're right. But sometimes they run into someone who has nothing flashy, nothing polished, just paperwork and patience and a refusal to be erased. The neighborhood settled after that. Mr. Halpern still waves when I drive by. A couple newer families have moved in. No HOA ever materialized, though I suspect Brent tried. We're civil now. Not friendly. Civil. And every so often, when I back my trailer down that side stretch, I think about how close I came to letting it slide. How easy it would have been to convince myself it wasn't worth the stress, the attorney fees up front, the awkward tension. 10 feet isn't much until it is. Because if I had given him that strip, what would have been next? A complaint about my equipment. A zoning push. Pressure to sell. Sometimes these disputes aren't about land at all. They're about who gets to belong. I didn't fight just for gravel. I fought for the right to exist in a space I paid for. Now here's the part I'm still not sure about. Did I escalate it? Absolutely. Was the mulch petty? Sure. Was the porta potty excessive? Probably. But would Brent have backed down without resistance? I doubt it. So I'll leave it to you. If someone builds on your property and dares you to call a lawyer, do you wait quietly? Or do you make sure they feel every inch they try to take? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you stand. Was I defending what was mine? Or did I turn it into something bigger than it needed to be? And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor who thought confidence was the same thing as ownership, share that story too. These lines we draw on paper may look small, but sometimes they define everything. Hit like if you believe boundaries matter. Subscribe if you want more real stories about everyday people standing their ground. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's 10 feet of gravel reclaimed.